You know, it's actually possible to completely start your life over after 50 without a fortune waiting in the bank. Now, most financial advisors back home will tell you that that's not realistic, not possible. But here in the Philippines, Dumaguete actually in particular, I'm proving that changing your coordinates completely rewrites the rules of retirement. You know, in North America, you assume you have to have a certain amount of number. Well, you don't just assume it, you have to have it before you can even think about the realistic aspects of retiring, and more importantly, retiring comfortably. You don't want to just be putting in time, you want to live. And I would think for most of us, this number gets bigger and bigger every year. And for most people, it never really quite arrives. It always seems like something pushes it back. I mean, they're even talking now, especially in Canada here, you can opt out to continue to work until you're 70, so you get a bit of a higher pension. But what a lot of people fail to not really talk about is other options, which is changing where you live instead of how much you have. By just opening that door, being open-minded to this whole topic can really change the aspect of your whole future out plan. Later in this video, I'm going to break down exactly why I chose the Philippines and how much easier for the long-term side of things are for, like the long-term effect of how long you can stay here, etc., that most people don't even assume is possible. But before I get into the legal side of things, I just want to start with the actual foundation, the rebuilding of life here, the food cost, and how much it changes realistically your physical and, more importantly, even your mental health. You know, when I go shopping here in Canada, I get a little echo bag, I fill it up, and, especially if I want some meat in it and stuff like this, my gosh, I'm looking at, it's not hard to put $100 in there. I mean, if you compare Canadian dollars, that's like, darn near 5,000 pesos in one little echo bag. And you compare that to the Philippines, you're going to get a lot more. You're going to obviously get a lot more. And it's not, and it's a big difference. These numbers add up. And it's not just the fact of it being cheaper. I actually argue it's better quality in many ways. So for example, if I'm purchasing meat and stuff like that here in Canada, I can throw it in the fridge and not deal with it for a day or so before I even consider doing a marinade with it. I absolutely cannot do this in the Philippines. And I'll be quite honest, at first I thought I was getting the raw end of the deal, that, as soon as I put it, like the next day, it starts to go bad or something. But it turns out that there's just no pesticides that, make it stay shelf stable longer, just don't exist there. And this really is proven in the fruit and the vegetables and so on and so forth. Most of it is, from the local markets, is all local. I've gone road trips up in the mountains and I see these farmers there, and I've even bought directly from them. It's nice to interact with them. It gives you something to do as well. And it's just a much more fresh environment. Like, for example, I love my pineapple, and I put it in the fridge and I still got to eat it within about 3 days. Here in Canada, I put a pineapple on the counter. I can leave it for 2 weeks. I literally can leave it for 2 weeks and it still be fine to eat. Well, I use that word fine lightly and loosely, but, and this goes with a lot of stuff. And by me going back and forth, I can really notice this because of I don't notice it as much when I go there. I do notice it when I come back. After a few weeks, something feels a little off. I'm back to eating the foods that's here. I do physically notice the difference on my health of changing. Now, there's other factors to go along with that, but I definitely relate. I've been doing this for several years now, and I can relate a lot of it to the food. Now, that's just your local shopping. And it's like I said, that's part of the adventure as well. But that also equates to when you're going out for eating. It's drastically different. Let's face it, tell me where I'm from wrong. When you think about going out to a meal here in North America, you kind of have to look at your wallet first because you know how much it's going to cost, right? Well, when I can go to a place, in Dumaguete, for example, and there's many restaurant selections there. A lot of them cater to foreigners and stuff like that. I actually like a lot of the local stuff as well, but it's so cost effective. I can, a couple of my favorite spots that I go to, there's just absolutely no comparison. And even if I go to the so-called simpler restaurants or whatever, they offer fantastic meals for a couple hundred pesos. That's, $4 or $5 best in comparison. We're going to get a full meal for that price back here in Canada. So one of the ones I really use as a good example as well, it's not just the food, it's also the location, because it is much more involved. It's like, so I'm going to give you a really prime example. One of my places I'd love to go is right along, it's in Darwin area. It's a great pizza place right on the beach. Order my stuff there. I can go swimming. I can actually snorkel, get to see some turtles, come back and relax. Have a delicious pizza, full size pizza. Meat lovers, it's one of the more expensive ones you're going to get. I'm paying maybe around $10 Canadian. It's 500 pesos. So my point being there, it's not just the food price, it's also the location. If I found something like this in my area here back home in my country, just the entrance fee or something like that, they wouldn't let you sit there for very long. It wouldn't even be comparable. It just wouldn't be comparable in price. And that's just one example. I'm going to make other videos regarding food. I think I should do a separate one on that because I'm kind of a foodie, and it's also the location I really enjoy. It's the atmosphere, it's the socializing, and all of these things bring out a better quality in life just naturally. And when you can do this on a budget that you can afford, it feels like you're actually living a more fulfilled life. Now, eating well for pennies, is a massive weight off your shoulders. It's a big stress relief. It makes you feel more freedom and all this kind of stuff. Absolutely. But the low cost of living means nothing if you're still trapped in a stressful environment. And this is the second part I want to touch base on, especially here where like I said, here in the Philippines and Dumaguete in particular, where I'm at. I'm more up in Valencia, got the fresher air, and it's a lot more relaxed lifestyle. The weather, if I now, especially because I go there when it's wintertime for me here in Canada. So for example, in the winter, my mornings would consist of starting up, the heat and getting a coffee warmed up, looking outside the window, maybe scraping off some moisture of ice and stuff like that and seeing if I want to go outside or not. Where around here, I'm opening up the screen door, walking outside, getting that fresh air, that warm, beautiful breeze. Walking, if I take a little trip, I'm down to the ocean, along the beach. Everything is a lot more slower pace. And again, with that type of weather, you feel more alive. You feel more like you want to do something. I'm trapped inside the house when it's that cold for a few reasons. And so in comparison, when I'm here in the Philippines, you feel like a brand new life has been able to open up because you just get to go, and enjoy the weather. Even when it rains, it's a warm rain, it's very rarely you have to be thinking about being cold. And coming back to the health issue on this, the warm weather kind of keeps me more active in that respect. Get to do more walks. I'm not stuck indoors. And if it's extremely hot, yes, it's on the flip side. I'm a little bit less active, of course, but then I get to take an afternoon nap. That's quite healthy as well. But I can't stress the importance of it. When winter months keep a person cooped up, you don't get your vitamin D3, you don't get the sunshine. It does affect your moods. It's a scientific fact. And here the weather is not that kind of seasonal. You get to be outside all the time. Sure, there's seasons where it's wet season, what they call here, quite rainy and stuff like that. But you still can find times to be outside. It's nowhere near comparison to be stuck in a snow blizzard. The physical shift alone changes how your whole nervous system operates day to day. And as we get older, I think that's more and more important. High stressed, rushing around in the mornings versus a slower, beautiful outdoor routine. That's your body responds to the environment, whether you're paying attention to it or not. Now, again, all of this lifestyle, it doesn't mean a lot if the government makes it impossible for you to actually stay. And I want to start touching base on that as well, because a lot of this is why I chose. I look at it in particular, first of all, the Philippines, and then, of course, Dumaguete. You can have the best foods, you can have the best weather, you can have all these kind of things, but if you're constantly stressed about whether your visa is going to work, how long you have, what are the options, you're not really escaping anything. You're just trading one stress for another. So when I looked at my paperwork, my thinking of how I have to restart over and be able to do all these kind of things at an affordable pace, there's a couple things that, make me do a checklist, and culture is one. Of course, that's very, everybody knows that the culture is very friendly here. And then the other one is the language barrier. Now, it's getting more easy in a lot of places, no matter where you pick, in the tourist areas. But, one of the things about the Philippines is that they teach English in the classrooms. And I've done a lot of traveling around there, and I'm trying to learn the local language as well. So between that and all my hand signals and stuff like that, I've never found that a restrictive issue. Even when I'm going into remote areas. So language was quite a huge thing on there for me to analyze. And this is another reason why I chose the Philippines. And then it was literally the visas, okay? And the visa thing, You know, a lot of people say, oh, you can stay long term, this, you can do that, you can buy a nomad's visa, you know, you can try this, and you can. A lot of that came down to, what I like is official. What are the official rules? What are the official laws? Okay, yeah, you might be able to do things a little backdoorish in Thailand or something like that, and just pay somebody and do this. You know, these are common things you can probably do in a lot of different countries. But that's not what I want to rest my faith on. Okay, I like to know what the actual written law is, because I'd like to keep my anxiety level low. And this is where the Philippines hit a top score for me. Okay, because this is what I found one of the almost the easiest countries to get in for thinking about a longer term. And allowing you to do this really lets you decide whether, because I don't recommend anybody just quickly pack, and I've known this. Okay, I've seen people, I've met people, I personally know people that have never even been and just packed a couple bags and went. And I'll be making videos of that just because it's an interesting story. But I always recommend you come. And I actually say minimum you should stay a full year before you consider, and probably even longer before you consider making any long permanent decisions. You want to go through all the seasons. You want to go, and more importantly, you want to go through the honeymoon stage, okay? You want to get past all this is a beautiful holiday to daily routine of living. You want to find out what their aggravating things can be as well. Now, getting back to the nuts and bolts of it, the bottom line is you can stay for 3 years in the Philippines on a tourist visa. This is the simplest visa to obtain. It's the most cost effective in the beginning. And it's really easy. And you don't need to apply depending where you're coming from, but you got to do your own independent research. But most countries you're coming from, you don't even have to apply for a visa. You automatically get a 29-day visa there. And away you go and you renew it. Now, you can stay up to 3 years in the country by simply just going and renewing your tourist visa. I mean, you tell me anywhere else that you can stay for 3 years as a tourist, okay? And the reason why I emphasize this, because it's so important to understand that there is no obligation right now. You're just literally, that's it. That's a simple way. It gives you time to really explore the country, the culture, the foods, the weathers, the whole thing, whether you can tolerate this for considering long term. And by doing this, you're not locked into, you're not putting money aside and having to do anything. And this was the biggest check mark for me personally, because I want to feel settled, I want to feel comfortable and take my time. Now, I've chosen Dumaguete for a host of reasons. That's because of the location, the airport, traveling in around it, the paved roads. I could actually make a pretty in-depth video just on that alone. I kind of want to summarize everything. Another thing I really like about it is their immigration office is extremely helpful, extremely friendly, very decent process. And I've never had issues with that. And quite honestly, I've seen some expats in there with kind of, for lack of better words, bad attitude, and they're still tolerating it. Is, you know, me personally, I was kind of surprised even. So I got to give them a full out credit. They're fantastic there. They're very easy to work with. I think it's really good. I've been in other locations in the Philippines, and you know, I've never had an issue per se, but I haven't felt more welcome in any other immigration office besides in Dumaguete, quite frankly. And it might sound like a small detail, but it's important, okay? Because when you feel that energy, that vibe, it's an important thing. I've been to some places where, like I said, I didn't have an issue, but you know, I'm polite, I'm doing nothing, and there's not even a response. Like I remember one, we all sort of talked about it. I remember talking to some other aspects at the time. She was just almost like hated the fact she had to do this, you know, stamp. Like, would literally just throw it across the table or the counter, whatever, stuff like that. In any case, not trying to harp on any of that, but it's an uncomfortable feeling. Whereas when you get a smile and it's all going fine, and, you know, I might do a little mistake on the application and you're not getting pounded on it, and they just correct you, and or all these kind of things, it really makes the whole atmosphere of it much more pleasant. Now, there is also a retirement visa, which is a very, very good option to look at. I might personally looking at that as well myself. This is the one you'd have to put money into it, and depending on your circumstances, you can prove an income, then you can pay less on it. There's quite a few things. And if you guys are interested more about that, leave a comment on there. I can help you out with that, or maybe I'll make a separate video. I'll just leave some if you're interested in that. But I do recommend thinking about that, but that wouldn't be my first step. I would take full advantage of the tourist visa. First of all, especially if you've never been, okay, don't even consider about saying I'm moving for good and that's it, that's all. Come for a while. I really personally recommend a year, if a little bit longer, that would be great. Really do a full season, do the full cycle. Not only to see all the weather changes and all this kind of stuff, you will, after a few months, start going into the honeymoon phase is over and going into this is my life routine. And that's when things shift. And a lot of people are not able to do this. They can't adjust the same way. So that's just a little bit of a personal advice. Again, leave in the comments if you got some direct questions on them. I do enjoy engaging. So I really want to say starting your life over at 50 isn't about really giving up your goals or sacrificing or walking away with less. It's really about realizing you do and have the option of having real peace, real comfort, financial freedom, just by choosing the right environment, the right location. And another thing, environment really does change us. The environment we're in really does affect our moods, our focus, our energy levels, our health, the whole thing. And I think as we get older, we should cling on to that a lot more. We want that peacefulness. We want everything. And living well in a lower budget is incredible on its own. It truly is. But none of this really matters if you don't feel completely safe, in your new home either. And this is another reason why I chose this area. I mean, I've never felt unsafe in the Philippines. I'll be quite honest. A little bit of common sense, I think, goes a long ways. So I've never felt completely uneasy or unsafe in the Philippines either way. I find Dumaguete is in itself, I think it was rated, I forget the statistics, I've made another video about that as well, but it's quite well rated up there as well for safety. And like I said earlier, there's not a lot of places I ever felt uncomfortable in the Philippines anyway. But then I'm not a guy that really puts myself in those situations anyway. Now, there is a lot of expats in this particular area that has some pros and cons on that. I'll probably make a separate video on that in the future as well. And really, the pros are, first of all, one of the real things I do enjoy about it, I'm not involved in a lot of the expat communities and stuff like that and stuff. I do like my own thing. But I will say that the effect of it is way more selection on restaurants, better quality of foods and pricing and all this kind of stuff. So that's definitely, because I've been in other places in the Philippines where, like, from one extreme to another, no expats at all, stuff like that. It has its own glory and its own beautiful things about it, but definitely something you don't find then is any kind of food selection when you want that, you're craving something from North America maybe, or even for its own ingredients to cook at home and stuff like that makes it a lot more difficult to get. So that's definitely a huge positive. And then hospital care can be completely different as well, which is a good thing in the proper way. I think the most negative thing people focus on when there's too many of them, I mean, the expats per se, they say it can get, discouraging and stuff like that. I don't know. I haven't personally let it affect me because I don't really get involved in all the negativity or the drama or stay away from it. So I feel completely safe. And, I found another place on a completely different island. And I left my place. I keep my place year round, and I left my place empty there. My motorcycle parked outside. I was a little wondering about that particular area just because I'd never been there before and stuff like that. I had no issues whatsoever. I never had anybody mess with my motorcycle or break in, and it was empty because I did grass and the trees and all this kind of stuff. They were overgrowing. They were going right up into the window inside, so it was visibly empty. And again, so safety and stuff like that, I've never had an issue with. Well, anyway, folks, here, I really appreciate you sticking in. And if you got any questions, leave them in the comments. And I hope to see you on the next one. Everybody take care.